Welcome to another mega exciting kingscrusher radio show. So this is around 9:10 on a Tuesday. So streaming to Play Chess.com and YouTube at the same time. Okay, I thought we could continue from next week, from last week. We're going to continue from last week, where we were looking at Magnus Carlsen against Sergey Karjakin past encounters. Now we're going to jump to the year 2008. Welcome to another mega exciting kingscrusher. Oops, I have to put mute there. Pardon me. So in the year 2008, they had some encounters, and this was one of them. I'm going to show you. It was in the Amber Tournament blindfold. So the Amber Tournaments, or series of tournaments, I believe, was sponsored by a Dutch billionaire, Oostrom, who happened to be, by the way, the ICCF world champion at least one occasion. So a Dutch billionaire organising these tournaments. So Amber Tournament blindfold. I think he was trying to test the capabilities of the Super Grandmasters in extreme ways. So blindfold and Blitz and stuff. But of course nowadays, the Blitz and Rapid is much more popular than it was when he started his series. So anyway, Magnus Carlsen as white played e4, and we see a Sicilian defense from Sergey. We get an open Sicilian actually here, knight f3, d6, and we have an open Sicilian position. Okay, and I'm going to put on a Blitzer just in case. That'll be good. So we're going to use frets for stability. And what does live book? I'm going to connect to the live book. Okay, so we have an open Sicilian defense position. Okay, knight f6. White defends this pawn. Knight c3. And that popular Najdorf move, a6. Very, very popular. The Sicilian Najdorf. Najdorf himself, by the way, was a very, very strong player. Had fantastic Olympiad performances, as well as giving his name to this opening. So bishop e2. We have e5. This variation is quite a classical one. So bishop e2, it looks like quite a modest move. Now e5 does weaken this d5 square. Knight b3, and a lot of play often revolves around d5 square now. Thematically, white is often wanting to play something like this in principle to undermine the d5 square and keep the bishop hemmed in on f8. That's often a strategic plan here. And we saw last week actually Karjakin having a brilliant win in this line where he managed to liberate this backward pawn later. But let's see in this game what happened. There's a different story to it for sure. Bishop e7, bishop g5, bishop e6. So first priority is that d5 square, even before castling here. You might think, yeah, is that the book move actually? It actually is. Bishop e6 is the top live book move. Maybe castling is okay, but this seems to be a little bit more flexible, bishop e6. And now you might be surprised, but white does not wait for an invitation with h6. White snaps off f6 immediately with bishop takes f6. And I think one of the reasons is white's going to gain the tempo at some point when this queen moves and we castle queenside here. White's going to get a tempo on d6, getting the bishop to retreat back. Queen d3 is better than d2 actually. No one plays queen d2 here. I think it's because of this bishop g5 resource. It's just asking for trouble if you play queen d2. So queen d3 is the main move, or knight d5. Queen d2, bishop g5, immediately black's better actually. You don't want to do that. No, so queen d3. So still with the idea though that if you castle queenside, there's going to be pressure on d6. Knight c6. Castle queenside. Here's something quite radical happens though, which influences all potential like endgames. black really commits to something really radical. You might think here, okay, what if black did just humbly defend d6? What if black did play something like bishop e7? It is a little bit passive, but maybe, you know, it's not completely like losing. But where is black's counterplay? Black's play seems to be lacking counterplay after bishop e7. We see a much more radical idea in this position, in this blindfold game. Knight d4, and it seems quite logical in many respects to exploit the fact that the bishop is on f6, holding that d4 square. So if we can set up, even if it's double pawns, it's shielding the d6 pawn. So what do you think about this? Knight takes d4, doubling black's pawns. But now at least d6 is shielded, and black does have the bishop pair. So a very interesting position indeed. Now it would be bad to retreat this knight, because actually bishop takes a2 is pretty good here. This is just winning a pawn basically. There's always the option of taking on b1, for example, like this, or even better rook c8, and it's just too dangerous. You can't do this as a positional sack or anything. No, knight d5 was played, shielding a2 and saying I'll have more simplification if you want. And we have now the move bishop takes d5, e takes d5, and now black castled. So an interesting position in that our two contenders for the world title next year, they have opposite colour bishops here. Who has the space advantage? They both got advanced pawns on the 5th. Black has the double pawns, so you might think if black's got the double pawns, white's got some sort of potential for a pass pawn somewhere else. You might think the queen side, but isn't it suppressed? So an interesting position. So let's see who's away. Who would you favour from this position, white or black? Remember, it's a blindfold game as well, but they're super GMs anyway. So so who do you prefer out of the opening here, white or black? So if I ask on stream, if I give you a few seconds, who do you think is actually better here in this position? So this is at move 15. So some simplification here. Black solved the d6 pawn issue. Black gave up. Whoa, pardon me. So we've got opposite colour bishops. That d pawn seems quite safe really at the moment. So what's the poll like here? If I said, you know, who's better here? Who would you rather be, white or black? Oh, quite a few of you said white on stream here. Oh, that's interesting. 5, 4, 5, 6, 7 of you said white. And I don't know if anyone venture any reasons. Maybe I should have said, oh, if you can give a reason. The engine likes white a bit better than black actually. It gives a small advantage to white. I guess we have a prejudice towards double pawns, a natural prejudice, a caution about double pawns. Okay, so let's see how the game evolves. Black castled, and now we have this move queen f3, which means that the blockade square in front of the pawn can be blockaded with the bishop, which also of course points at h7. So that's a nice first initial little positional maneuver. Just swap the blockader, so the bishop blockades on d3, but black, by playing this, is allowing now queen f6. So does Magnus want further simplification? Is this going to be a draw, a blindfold draw? White did take on f6, didn't bother with anything else. Is that boring? Pardon me. Is that boring? If queen h3, it's a little bit misplaced, the queen, maybe just g6. I'm not sure how white actually carries on here that profitably. But okay, so Magnus just went for the queen exchange and took this open file. There is something quite subtle about this position, in fact. Something a little bit subtle about this position, which probably escapes most people's attention. That, okay, white's first to the e file, but where's the entry point? It's not e7, right? But there is something more subtle, that white does have an operation available, b4, b5, hitting this structure, whilst black does not have any such equivalent operation against white. White's pawns here are pretty solid, and they can't be undermined in any way. You can't imagine any undermining operation, but you can imagine an undermining operation for white, and that might be the source of an advantage, because if you can undermine b5, then this bishop is going to get maybe this diagonal, and that could help. So let's see how the game progresses from here. Rook f e8, and Magnus is happy to exchange off another pair of rooks here, and he closes off this diagonal with this move f4, which could be handy for black to play bishop g5 at some point. So g6, and now we see this, perhaps one of the key things that white can do that black can't. This undermining operation, basically. This pawn structure can be undermined at b5. We see b4. How dangerous is this? Well, one scenario is if you ever play b5 and black takes, you've isolated this pawn, and potentially this pawn could become nifty. You could move the king to the center, and you can try and get some action going, maybe to b7 later. It's all hinges on being able to play b5. So anyway, king f8. We have king b2 here, though. The king is preparing maybe to be a little bit more active, out and about potentially. Something like this or this to hit d4. King e7. King b3. So both players are activating their kings. Rook c8. And this is quite intriguing, because I think some players would be a bit worried about this rook c3 check. And Magnus has gone with his king to b3. Why is he not concerned about rook c3 check? He actually just plays g4. And it really doesn't matter here about rook c3 check. It wasn't actually played. Black's move was actually bishop h4. Yeah, maybe trying to bounce the bishop like this into e3, and that was stopped. But if black did play, if Sergey Karjakin did play the check, it doesn't matter so much. King b2, and white's going to be quick on that e file, and this, I think this is quite dangerous actually for black to lose a little bit of time like this. In fact, here stopping rook e1, but this continuation looks as though white's still better and the rook's not really doing much. White might be looking forward to still playing on the queen side as well, maybe like this, and controls that file. So yeah, black wasn't that tempted to throw in the check. Was it Fischer said, Panzer sees a check, Platzer plays a check, and sometimes it works. You know, you play a check and it's devastating, but here I don't think it's that devastating, this rook c3 check. Sorry, so g4, yeah, allowing rook c3, but it wasn't played. We have bishop h4, and it looks as though black might be interested in playing something like at some point bishop f2. That's extinguished for rook f1, but also this has more to it than just holding f2. There's actually a positional threat now in this position, which is actually the rook coming to the third, and it's a tempo gain to look at h7. This is quite dangerous as a positional threat. We see king d7 and rook f3. Yeah, we're one move away. Pardon me. We're one move away now from rook h3. So black, in advance of h7 being loose, plays rook h8. So black's holding the fort at the moment. Rook h3, bishop f6. One of my favourite Sergey Karjakin expressions, by the way. I heard him say about crazy rooks in an endgame. The rooks are not that crazy here, but I just thought I'd mention that. Yeah, he likes his rook and pawn endings when both rooks are on the board, apparently. But anyway, here he's on the defensive a little bit, and what is white doing though? White plays g5, gaining a bit more space, and now rook f3, as though f5, f6 to really squish that bishop maybe as an idea. Alternatively, even more dangerous, just take here, and then there's rook f7 check, of course. So f5 does seem like something to deal with, and black deals with it by playing f5 himself. And now we see the move h4, which looks as though h5 would be very nifty. If h6 has ever got in, then that would cramp black severely, and black couldn't really afford something like this, dismantling his pawn structure. So black now, to parry h5, plays h5 himself, and the whole king side is now sealed up, right? But with white storing a positional advantage in terms of space there, at least. So we have this opposite colour bishop situation where the king side is kind of sewn up now. Black still has those double pawns. So what is white doing in this position? White can still play for b5 at some point. He plays rook f1, which implies actually that maybe the rook can be used here at some point, or on the queen side generally, but b5 is in the air here, and now rook e8 looks as though, isn't this a little bit of a concern if the rook comes in here and starts attacking these pawns, trying to dismantle them? If black can take this, then he's got a passed h-pawn, right? This has to be balanced. This potential passed candidate pawn here needs to be balanced with what white can do on the queen side. Magnus Carlsen plays b5 now. Black can't take that even in this position because that's end of game, clearly. So in fact, a nifty move is played here, a nifty looking move. King c7, offering a pawn, it seems, but Magnus does take on a6, but he doesn't take now this pawn. I think it would be far too dangerous, or is it? No, actually, you know, technically it might be playable to do this. Bishop takes a6 apparently, but instead we see king a4 taking his time, just putting the pressure on black, activating the king more. King a4. Remember though, this rook e3 does promise black a passed h-pawn potentially, and to try and get the bishop a bit more active if some of these pawns can be knocked out. And we do see this now, rook e3. Now it looks even more risky to do bishop takes a6 in this position. If bishop takes a6, then d3 activating the bishop could be good first, and then going for rook h3. And this is getting slightly dangerous, this position. This didn't happen though. Magnus kept the blockade on this bishop. Doesn't really want to liberate this bishop. He played actually king a5. He's going to try and get this pawn and get his a pawn. So which a pawn, which is it, the a pawn which is going to win this game, or the h pawn? Rook h3. There's a symmetry to both plans here. Black is trying to get this, white's trying to get this going, it would seem. King takes a6. We have a kind of race scenario, a bit like a backgammon game. Both sides racing each other here with very similar plans, in fact. So, but there's a twist here. There's a very, very big twist in the position. White does not have to indulge in this pawn race. There's something else which has emerged here, which is even more powerful about this position. King safety. We have the kings, it's not always about the pawns. We have rook e1, which tests black, because black is now threatened with rook e7 check, winning the bishop. Black has to parry that, and he plays king d8. But it's here that a change of plan, a surprising change of idea. White is not keen to use his a pawn as much as another idea now, which emerges. A very strong idea in the position. Guess, and if you can guess the next move, I think, oh, that'll be interesting if you can guess the next move. White's play. I've given you a slight clue. White's play here. What would you play here? Any ideas? You see, there are two plans, aren't there? There's the plan with the A pawn, or you might choose a plan based on black's king safety, which would be, you'd think, is black's king unsafe? The move bishop b5 was played here, and it does threaten check, and then that check again, which would win the bishop, right? So it's running with tempo. If Magnus had played king b7, this is actually okay as well. So actually white does seem to be better. Even this move does seem quite good, and white could actually go with the a pawn. Both plans are kind of viable. I think white has the advantage anyway, but this does seem the most incisive, it seems. Bishop b5. We're immediately threatening rook e8 check, and black now plays d3, liberating the bishop here. If white tries to win the piece now, surely there's a trap to that, trying to win the piece. He doesn't go in for this, trying to win the bishop, because this pawn would be dangerous, right? Magnus plays king b7, threatening mate in 1. That's the threat here. Now, if he had actually just gone for the bishop, say like this crudely, then here d2, not d takes c, is strong. If dc, king b7 is strong apparently. This is not working. We run into a discovered check and win the queen. But there is a way for black to equalise technically with d2. This pawn does actually save black, it seems. Theoretically speaking, with a perpetual attack on the bishop. But anyway, no, Magnus is not having any of that with that d pawn. He's not letting this d pawn run rampant. No, that prisoner is going to be kept under lock and key. So king b7, well, immediately threatening the mate in 1, that needs to be parried. And here black hasn't got many moves to stay on the board. He plays a blocking move, desperate, bishop e5 to stop the mate. That bishop snaps up. Now rook e4, a little final trick from Sergey, perhaps. Does this even do anything? Not really. It could actually be taken here and there's no problem. Magnus played rook c1, but this can actually be taken. There's no trick here. You know, d2, we've got all sorts of moves. We've got rook d4. dc, we've got rook c4. There's no trick there. That could have actually been taken as well. Black's position is pretty desperate. But anyway, rook c1 was played. Yeah, it's over. d2, it's over. White's just a piece up. And now finally this a pawn signals it's going to queen here. And Sergey resigns. But to be fair, it was a blindfold game. But we're going over these games because, you know, they were played, these exhibition style tournaments, you know, the amber style tournaments. They're fascinating, some of these games. So in this one, some key positional points in a nutshell that we can make note of. Well, first of all, as far as the opening was concerned, it was following a very, very trendy line. Queen d3 to castle queenside on d6. The surprising move was knight d4. Black accepted double pawns, and despite simplification, white did seem to have a tiny little trump card on the queen side, being able to break with b5 at some point. And we seem to enter this racing scenario of passed pawns, but instead the white king, Magnus got his king very, very aggressive and well prepared for this endgame, not just for the passed pawn, but also to help in potentially weaving a mating net. And that turned out to be much more important. It won a piece. So that was an interesting game, I thought. I hope you found that one quite interesting. Did anyone find it interesting? Before we go on to another, I hope you got something out of it. So let's go on to another one. Okay. So still in 2008, we have the Tau Memorial that year. There was a Blitz tournament, Tau Memorial Blitz tournament. Mikhail Tau was, of course, very keen on Blitz chess, and was actually the first one of the first official world champions after Fischer in becoming a world Blitz chess champion. So this was the Tau Memorial, which they both played in Moscow in 2008, 30th of September. A fascinating encounter, this Blitz game. Sergey plays e4, and we have the Caro-Kann from Magnus, which we know, of course, he's played sometimes against Vishianand in the World Championship. So you maybe don't ordinarily associate Magnus with the Caro-Kann defense, but it's a pretty solid, versatile opening. d4, d5, we have e5, bishop f5. I think we associate Magnus often with e5, with just classical e5 systems nowadays. But anyway, this is a Blitz tournament, time to have fun. So bishop f5, we have knight f3, and in fact this variation is like the Nigel Short variation, popularised by Nigel Short, putting the bishop here, and white's enjoying a space advantage, and black's often having difficulty developing these pieces. Knight d7, castles, and this next move makes way for the f5 square. We have bishop g6, so that f5 square can be used like for a knight maneuver to untangle and develop. Knight d2, bd2, and here, yeah, knight h6 is the route chosen. This is the more popular route, actually. It's more popular technically, according to live, but the knight e7. I don't know if there's any major problem with this route. There might be some little subtle difference, actually, where knight h4, something about this position is in white's favour. Let's have a quick look just while we're here. Knight h4 in this position is not possible because of the queen. So that's just, if you're interested in playing the black side, it would seem knight h6 is far more popular than knight e7, probably because it doesn't allow this knight h4. You might think, well, knight f5, we can take on g6, and this will be better for white, technically. Okay, so a little finesse here, knight h6. Quite often knight b3 is played here, but this is also popular. c4, bishop e7. We're still in trodden paths here in this opening, but now usually, well, there's been 9 games of c takes d. Sergey Karjakin chooses queen b3, putting pressure on b7. That's protected. And now an intriguing looking move, queen c3. Why would someone put their queen there, you're wondering? The idea is to bolster pawns like this to have a cramping effect on black. If the pawns can be supported, it's also supporting the rook as well, indirectly. So we have castles. If black tried to liberate, by the way, here, is this even possible, c5? If black tried to do this, I think there's another point of the queen here. Looks as though this diagonal, like c takes, d takes, and there might be an issue with e6, potentially. This position. No, it's just an isolated pawn. Black doesn't want to do that. Isolated pawn is worse. Is king still in the centre? No. Okay. So black castled and allows white this cramping move c5. However, you don't have to undermine the pawn chain here. You can undermine the pawn chain at its head which Magnus Carlsen does now with f6. French defense players are used to that sort of thing. You can undermine on e5 and rip open this f file. Okay, so e takes f, bishop takes f6, b4. White's got, for the moment, a bind on e5, black playing e5, but black supports now knight with e5 with knight f7. So white's got that space advantage, but he's faced with e5 from black. This is very difficult to do anything about, in fact, in this position. Knight b3. e5 is played. And of course you don't want this diagonal opening up against the rook. It just looks good for the bishop generally. We see just bishop e3. Rook e8. Rook fe1. And Magnus stretches out with e4 now. Knight goes back. Knight h6. And it looks as though this is quite comfortable for black in some ways. With the tension released in the centre, there's pressure on d4. We have knight f1 and now knight f5, putting pressure on d4 and e3. The bishop moves out of the way, attacking the rook. The rook moves. Knight e3. Knight f8. Okay, question time. At move 21, this position. What do you think about this position? Who do you think's better, white or black? So if I ask you white or black on stream, who would you take in this position in this Blitz game? Black's just played that knight f8 move. White's got the advantage, it seems, on the queen side. Black in the centre here. But are these pawns going anywhere? Black, one vote for black. One vote for white, one vote, another vote for black. Black. Okay, majority is black at the moment. Okay. Bishop g4. Yep. Okay, knight takes e3. Now here, bishop takes c8. I don't think it's possible. Black has a good resource here. Knight takes g2. Hitting this bishop. And that'd be horrible to win an exchange like this. King safety would be up the spout. With black coming in with moves like this. No, you don't want to do that. No, you don't want to play that. F takes e3 was played. Knight e6. So black really does want to maybe take here to create a passed pawn and maybe liberate the bishop later and weaken d4. So the bishop moved. h5. Yeah. Now rook a8 was played. This unpin, this is an unpinning resource. Unpin and win. There's the expression pin and win, but unpin and win. Rook a8 means the knight can move now to hit the bishop without losing the exchange. Knight a5. Okay, this pawn is protected. Going into another pin though. The knight has to wait a bit longer now. Rook f1. b6. This knight goes back. Unpinning again. So again, we're renewing this threat of knight g5. Is white in a position even to stop knight g5, even if he wanted to? White plays a4 here. He's not in a great position to stop this. This bishop seems a little bit awkward. I guess white is not keen on playing bishop takes either. I think that will just help black a little bit anyway. So we see a4, queenside intentions emerging here, but knight g5 to preserve the pawn structure. Bishop f5. We have takes in. Looks for a moment, yeah, isn't white just doubling rooks here? Isn't this quite nice? Queen d7. But now a little bit of a routine move. The engine suggestion is to carefully move this rook back. In the game, actually, rook a f1 was played, and I'm not sure this was an intended positional exchange sack or not. But guess what black has in this position? A tactical move. Black to play. What did Magnus Carlsen play in this position? A strong tactical move, it seems. At least on the surface. Black to play. Yeah, there's a forcing move, knight f3 check. Oh, knight f3 check, interrupting the rooks. Okay, it's taken. E takes. So there's a pawn for the exchange. Maybe it wasn't seen as such a big deal because white still got his trump card on the queen side, that space advantage on the queen side. Can Magnus really fight well in this position? I know he's the exchange up. Can he fight well though from this position? His first move is b takes c5. So d takes is out of the question, and knight takes is out of the question because we dropped the bishop. So b takes. Now rook e6 is played. Queen d3, and now doubling on e3. Knight d2. We have queen b7. With ideas like queen b4 now, putting pressure on the position. h3, queen b4 is played. Knight goes back. And in fact, Magnus put his queen back here, believe it or not. There might be some danger in this position with queen takes a4, because it's inviting white to go on the attack, but and maybe Magnus simply didn't like this because there's threats like this and this, but you know, technically black actually would be okay, it seems, in this position here. For example, there's a tactical queen takes f1 tactical move which saves black's bacon there. So anyway, but yeah, Magnus, yeah, it's a blitz game. He played actually queen b7, which, okay, he's not a supercomputer. Queen b7 to see that sort of thing. It just looks dangerous to invite the queen in for this tactic anyway. So queen f7, queen b7 means now a move like queen here, we can have queen f7 as a defensive reaction to that sort of thing. Knight g3 is played, and the queen wants to go to f7 in this position to defend now h5 anyway. But isn't this running into bishop e5? This looks like a nasty pin. Magnus chases this knight, and you might find this next move a little bit surprising. Magnus actually gives back the exchange here with rook takes e5. It is a blitz game. What it does do, it smashes the structure. White's structure is mashed here with this exchange sack. And if he played this in a normal way without trying to sack the exchange, well, a lot of people would consider more normal without sacking back the exchange. As an example, I mean, let's imagine queen h5. There's knight f4. That's winning for white anyway. It's going to win the exchange rather. This knight f4 is going to be nasty in any case. Yeah, so this exchange sack, it seems actually it's not such a bad idea. The question about this sort of position with knight f4, where white can get to play knight g6 and hold e5 even more, is black could probably consider an exchange sack here. You know, the exchange sack mechanism, or even just taking that without using the exchange sack. But anyway, whatever. An exchange sack was played in this position with rook takes e5, d takes e5, rook takes e5. So what's the idea? The pawns are pretty isolated. This pawn in particular could be quite a target on the e file. Remember, black's got the dark square bishop, which could also help gang up on this pawn later. What about knight f4? Is that ruled out now? Knight d4 was actually played. If knight f4, rook e4, this is quite nice for black, with moves like queen e8 coming, just to hit e3 later, or maybe d4 just to try and break through. And make an issue out of white's king safety. So we see a more cautious knight d4 blockading black, it seems, and we're back to being about equal. Actually, the position it technically is about equal, but black would seem to have an easier to play position in some respects. But at the moment, knight takes c6 needs to be parried. We have a dual purpose defensive and attacking move in queen e8. Defending c6, putting more pressure here, and with an idea also rook e4 would mean bishop takes d4 coming for the rook to come to the first rank, and that plays out this idea. a5, we have rook e4, so we have an option now of either this or maybe this to target e3. Knight f5, we have queen e5. Now here again hitting c6, queen drops back now to c7, a6, and it's here Magnus swaps off there to liberate his rook a little bit. The rook's now got access to the first rank. Queen e7, so this check looks a little bit dangerous. The first rank is defended in advance. Now queen g5. If black gets a move like queen g3, and this ending's ideal, the rook putting pressure on d4 and this pawn would be quite nice. We have rook b1. I don't think, well, queen g3 wasn't played here. This looks like a dangerous check in some respects. King h7 was played. If queen g3 here, queen d2 holds e1 for the moment. That's actually, yeah, then what? So anyway, king h7, rook f1, king h6 waiting around for a moment, rook f3, queen g6, we have king h2, queen e6, some manoeuvring, and it looks to be stable at the moment at move 54, a bit stable. Check, queen f2, queen h6, rook f5, queen g6. There is a threat potentially of rook takes d4 to distract the queen away from f5, queen f3, just letting the d4 pawn go. This might be a small technical mistake here, this queen f3, even though it looks pretty clever. Is it some pawn sack to do with the h file? In this position, before we move on from there, apparently this was okay for white, rook f7, just to hit a7. This position would have been okay for white technically, but anyway, it's a blitz game, right? So queen f3 was played. So what's the idea? There's this dangerous looking check from Sergey. And now we have rook f5. Hasn't white just lost the pawn? Rook e4, check. Rook a8. Going for this pawn a bit slower than the other way. And now Magnus puts his queen on g5, which means queen e5 check is now threatened, followed by this rook e1. It looks to be a devastating attack, and white is without as much defense as before. So it seems Magnus, during maybe the more critical time periods of the game now, both players are probably in mad time trouble, is getting the dynamic trump cards in his favour, it seems. Queen c3, check, check, rook e1, yeah, he's woven a mating net again. It seems king safety has become the top priority, or the decisive issue here. Although, isn't this check dangerous? Check. g6, allowing this pawn to be lost with check, but the king now goes to h6. Isn't white running out of checks? Queen d2 check, g5. Where's the checks now? There's no more easy checks for white. White is faced with execution here. It's lost. Sergey gives up his queen, and this pawn is just not going anywhere, because this check is going to win that pawn. After check here is winning that pawn. So move 70, yeah. Sergey here resigns after the 70th move. The check, winning that pawn. Okay, it's just the Blitz game. It was a quite an intense Blitz game in the Caro-Kann defense, and both sides showing that they don't mind considering positional exchange sacrifices. Quite a complicated game, really. Some key points about it. White emerged from the opening. It seemed he wanted some queenside space advantage installed, maybe for future prospects of endgames where passed pawns are very dangerous. Magnus seemed to generate some kingside counterplay, and later was able to sort of get an advantage on the king side and start generating threats, especially when he gave up the bishop for the knight. He liberated his rook. Yeah, it just seems, yeah, like a really high class Blitz game. Okay, but yeah, there's some interesting ideas there. All right, let's have a look at another encounter in 2008. Okay, this is another Blitz game. I'm going to show you from the Town Memorial. So swapping colours. Magnus playing white. So Town Memorial, 29th of August 2008. Magnus white. C4, the English opening. We have E5 from Sergey. G3, knight f6. Bishop G2. We have D5. So it's like it's a pretty standard English opening line, quite popular. Knight f3, knight c6, knight c3. No, not knight c3. That's often played knight c3 in this position, but white plays castling. Yeah, it looks pretty standard, this position, out of the English opening. A tabia, as they're called. These tabias, these start positions that a lot of super GMs definitely know about quite a lot. So the standard plan here for white, a sort of standard plan is a3 with the idea quite often for b4, b5, and maybe bishop b2, and quite often white's using the c5 square. Once he puts a rook here, this knight can sometimes come to c5. That's a kind of standard plan. And black has got his plans as well, of course. In the meantime, black castled here. b4 is actually quite a very popular move immediately, but we see d3, bishop e6, rook b1. And a5, as if b4 is trying to be discouraged, and I think it actually it is pretty much discouraged in this position. I don't think anyone plays it in this position. There might be actually it's actually just losing a pawn for nothing here because the knight and bishop are on that pawn anyway. Okay, so bishop e3, knight d5. Knight takes, bishop takes. Now queen a4. And what might be annoying for black after queen a4 is this idea, some sort of queenside pressure building up with moves like maybe even queen b5 at some point. Could be quite annoying for black. We see queen c8, which vacates d8 for the rook. Is this passive for black though, this position? Rook bc1, we see rook d8. Okay, rook e1, and black increases the strength on that pawn, the protection on that pawn. Bishop c5, king h8. And this does seem quite a logical idea now. It seems as though here, at this moment, that somehow the rooks are not that great for black, it seems at this moment. And it would seem logical for white to try and open up the centre. And e4 is the prelude to that, kicking the bishop for potentially playing d4. He first takes on e7. And it does seem very, very thematic now to play d4 and logical, because what white is trying to do is kind of extend the scope of this bishop along that diagonal. The queen's also helping support d4. So that's another nice use of the queen coming to a4, that this d4 has been supported. Okay, so e takes d4, knight takes d4, and it looks quite comfortable for white. Hasn't white achieved something here? In this position, this liberating move could be quite dangerous. Not only opening up the bishop, but you know, this move looks dangerous at e5 as a potential threat if it's not handled. We see the move c6 in this position. If knight g6, yeah, that might be a plausible move, knight g6 against e5 as well, actually. But yeah, white looks to be a little bit better anyway. He can still go in for potentially e5 here. But we see c6 in the game anyway, trying to blunt this bishop in advance. Perhaps rook ed1. Queen c7. By the way, this tactic doesn't work here. Knight b5. Does it work here with this? Black actually can ignore it with queen b6. If c takes b, this actually be okay for white. Is it? Pardon me. Let's have a quick look at this. No, it's about equal this position apparently. Alright, knight b5 doesn't really do much anyway. That's what I mentioned there. So queen c2 was played. Queen b6. Which could be annoying. It is putting pressure on b2, and potentially this diagonal could be handy. Queen c3. Rook d7. black seems to have taken a lot of the power out of e5 out, because this bishop is just hitting this wall here. But e5 is nevertheless played in this position, e5. And this might be like not the greatest time to play this move, actually. It seems, I mean, there might be other ideas that are worth exploring here. Or just simply preparing e5 a little bit longer. For example, like with bishop h3, knight f3, as though e5 is going to come, well, that's hitting the rook. But this sort of position, just leaving it for the moment. There is a downside to e5, even though it looks really tempting. There's a downside here. It does give black that d5 square, which he has marked out. That d5 is compromised. We have f takes, but the nifty idea would seem knight f3, as though white's going to regain his pawn with interest. Sergey gets the tempo though, knight d5 hitting the queen. And actually his rooks, the black rooks now come alive. This really hasn't done a great deal of liberation work for white, this e5, because now in fact black's pieces seem perfectly alive here and coordinated. If you look at black's position now, it looks perfectly alive and coordinated. In fact, black seems to be sitting very comfortably here. Any knight g5 in this position, it doesn't matter about this, because actually it's bishop g6 here defending h7. And bishop g8, does that lose? That's okay as well, but bishop g6 is better. So anyway, rook d2 is played here. And bishop g6 is now played. And it just absolutely looks all of a sudden, I know it's just a blitz game, bear that in mind. It looks beautiful for black after rook e2. Black's got beautifully coordinated and very simply coordinated pieces, threatening queen takes f2 check. Yeah, it's all gone wrong positionally. This is just terrible what's happened here. It seems black is in a perfectly comfortable position. Magnus takes on e2 and drags the rook back with this check. But this pawn is there for the taking now. Queen takes b2. Rook e1. You might think, why does Magnus want exchange of rooks here? In fact, rook f8 was played in this position. If rook takes e8, yeah, this is okay for black as well. But no, we see rook f8 being played. And this pawn's loose now. Oh, pardon me. Sorry, rook f8 being played. This pawn is loose here. h4 and it's taken. Yeah, this looks pretty desperate. Why is white shedding these pawns on the queen side? h5, bishop f5. Magnus's queen has actually been kicked around quite a lot in this game. Another queen kick. And here, queen b4 eyes this rook on e1. And also, of course, says, look, do you want a queen exchange here? I've got these free connected passed pawns over here. Magnus puts his queen embarrassingly on on h2, and this is quite an embarrassing final position after bishop g4, where white is losing material, because if this knight moves, then the rook drops. The queen is not the queen's not in an ideal spot on h2 here. Yeah, it seems it all went wrong, but it was just the blitz game, so you know, who cares? It was a bit of fun. It's just all gone wrong for white, this position. White's just losing material here. His best might be, he resigned. His best might be this, apparently. Take here to protect, well, stop the rook being munched. But this is just hopeless, this ending with these passed pawns. And a piece down doesn't help either. So yeah, that was a crush for blitz game standards. back in 2008. Yeah, Sergey really crushed him in this game in the Town Memorial. But you know, what can you say? It's just Blitz, really. So it's just a bit of fun. It's not to be taken too seriously. Maybe Magnus had a sense of humour putting his queen on h2. It is funny putting the queen on h2. He's got a sense of humour with these games. He's thinking, yeah, people are going to play these games in the future and they're going to have a good laugh at this when I'm world champion. These Blitz games are mine that I played back in 2008. It is funny. I mean, it's funny. I mean, I don't. But anyway, no. On a more serious note, yeah, the English opening in Magnus's hands usually is quite deadly, but it seems here something went wrong with the e5 when it was played. It seems e5 triggered a series of quite non-trivial queen tempo gaining moves, which gave black an enormous positional advantage, if I'm not mistaken. You know, controlling that e file, pressure on b2, pressure on f2, infiltration points on e2, misplaced queen on the king side. It just seemed to collapse for white pretty badly. It seems e5 quite badly backfired. Yeah, if we went back to a critical moment there, as mentioned these other moves instead of e5, it seems sometimes that Magnus had some disastrous games sometimes involving, in fact, losing tempo on his queen. He had a disastrous game once against Anishgiri, and it wasn't a draw. No, Magnus actually lost against Anishgiri in a disastrous fashion, I remember, in a Grunfeld. But I think there was something a lot with the queen tempos as well. But no, this was just a blitz game, and you know, so what? It's a bit of fun. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the free games this week and got something out of them, if not some amusement or instruction. So have a good week and see you next week. Remember to like the video if you got something out of it and you did like it a bit. So likes are always appreciated. So see you next week. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.